Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. I am here with the weekly astrology forecast for the week beginning today, January 4th, and moving through Saturday, January 10th, 2026. This week's themes include devotion and creative flow, but also this art of paying attention to subtle energy so that expansion continues to happen. It always happens, but so that it happens in the right size and in the optimal way. And this week builds momentum in kind of a particular way. We're still in Capricorn season. Capricorn is the sure-footed mountain goat. So this is about embodiment and commitment and long-term orientation. But we've got some quintiles this week, and that's really going to help us find some creative insight, find some spiritual craftsmanship. And, this week is about a lot of this year is going to be about working with subtle energy because the outer planets are all subtle energy, right? So this is about crafting our alignment and moving with the flows. We're not chasing outcomes. We're not forcing things. We're acting because we have a higher sense of what's happening. So let's start off with today. Today's a day of kind of quiet mastery and subtle alignment. One aspect has already happened at around 4:30 this morning. We had Mercury by quintile Uranus. So this is going to give us that kind of lightning bolt or spark of creative intelligence, innovative communication. While Mercury is typically about 3D communication, Uranus is about we are the high technology we seek, right? So with this biquintile, there might be flashes of real insight of how our 3D communication converges with us being antenna and creating all the time. So this is about, flashes of insight that feel elegant rather than disruptive. The insight being about ourselves as creators. And it's going to help us lift ourselves up and out of this 3D linear world, right? And there's the downloads are going to come through pattern recognition or intuition or just this sudden kind of Uranian flash of clarity. So I would offer with this aspect, pay attention to what comes quietly today. Pay attention to the subtle energy. At, and we have a couple other things going on today around 111 actually. We have the sun quintile Saturn. And this aspect is going to give us a feeling of empowerment from the inside. The sun is our 3D self. Saturn in quintile speaks to mastery through discipline. Mastery through discipline. Saturn is not restricting for its own sake. It's really asking us to check in and make sure we're in our souls, the seat of our soul. We're aligned with why we're really truly here. So this aspect might help us feel really steady in our sense of who we are and why we're here, and willing to commit, willing to realize we are here to create something. But also it's about pacing ourselves and being true to ourselves without feeling guilty or beholding to the energy or influence of others. This is a really beautiful day today to tend to long-term structures, long-term plans. There's one final aspect around 10:30 tonight. We have Venus quintiling Saturn as well. So one of the things that's happening this week is that if you remember, if you listen to my podcast on yesterday, January 3rd, we had the Sun, Mars, and Venus in a conjunction that happens once every 6.5 years. And that is about reharmonizing the divine masculine and feminine. So what's going to happen this week is the Sun and Mars and Venus are going to be experiencing a lot of the same aspects. You'll hear it as I'm walking through the aspects. But so we just had the Sun quintile Saturn, and then later on today we have Venus quintile Saturn, right? And so Venus quintile Saturn at around 10:30 at night. So this means, as the day closes, themes about beauty and relationship and justice and balance and even financial themes can come into focus, but they can really, there's this sense of Venus with Saturn quintile, there's a sense of maturity and grace. So this is about, being true to ourselves, acting from our heart without a sense of heaviness, really authentically choosing what's worth our time, what's worth our consciousness, what's worth our energy, what's worth the energy from our heart. So, this aspect also supports if we need to set boundaries, the boundaries are going to be rooted in our own sense of self-respect. And relationships aren't going to be forced. There's going to be this sense of integrity and long-term picture. So being willing to commit to some kind of consistency. And, our values are kind of clarified by our lived existence. There's not a force here. There's a really going with the flow. There are no major aspects on January 5th, so I'll go ahead and skip to January 6th. There's one aspect on Tuesday, January 6th, and that is the Sun conjunct Venus. Exactly. And this is about the union of value and purpose. So today, that happens around 11:30 in the morning, January 6th, Tuesday. This could feel like a really harmonizing day. And the Sun and Venus are conjunct in the sign of Capricorn. We're still in Capricorn season. And this is helping us to align our identity, our ego, our 3D self with our true values, with why we're really here, with larger senses of harmony and co-creation and cosmic balance. So we might really be able to feel a sense of ease with who we are and why we're here, a clarity about what we want to give our energy to, what we want to invest our time or our resources in. And this isn't an indulgent Venus. This is a discerning Venus with Saturn. It's a day to appreciate what you're creating, and also, but to do so with a sense of why am I here now? Why does this really matter? And then let's get to Wednesday. Wednesday's a pretty big day here for us this week. And Wednesday's kind of a pivotal day, but it's a subtle pivot. And this is a day of inspiration, devotion, and flowing energy. And it's one of the most spiritually infused days of our week. So we have multiple quintiles with Neptune, and we have the Venus-Mars conjunction being exact today. So Mars is going to quintile Neptune first at around 4:20 in the morning. And Mars quintiling Neptune is our action-oriented self, Mars, aligning with our intuition, Neptunian ability to see beyond the illusion and delusion. So the movement and the action becomes sacred because it's coming from a space of deep knowing and deep wisdom. And the effort, if there is an effort, it's going to feel like a flow. So this is a good energy for creative work, for, gentle but purposeful action. Midday around 11 a.m., we have Venus next is going to quintile Neptune. And so that's going to be where our heart can kind of soften. Neptune is dissolving boundaries, right? Self versus other. So that means that also our sense of compassion can really deepen here today, midday. And the sense of justice and the larger, big picture cosmic beauty is the medicine. And it feels like sacred medicine. So this is about, subtle, inspired alignment. And throughout the day today, because Neptune's so active, we have another Neptune aspect right after this. Let your energetic sensitivity, let that be your strength. Because the next thing that happens today, right about 5 o'clock, the Sun is next going to quintile Neptune. So they're Venus, Mars, and the Sun are kind of having the same things happen like dominoes throughout this week. So this means that our sense of our 3D self, our egoic self, can kind of release and relax into something larger. I'm mentioning part of this theme is it's not just about ourselves, but ourselves as a part of the co-created, interconnected collective. So our purpose, our ego, our identification is going to be informed by our intuition rather than by a sense of control. So this is a day to listen for what's true rather than push and force. The last aspect that happens, I mentioned Venus conjoining Mars. This is around 9:45 in the morning. Venus and Mars are together exactly conjunct in the sign of Capricorn. So this is going to kind of, I mentioned that the Sun and Mars and Venus being conjunct, that's about harmonizing the divine masculine and divine feminine into our 3D world. But here, Mars conjunct Venus is about, grounding desire into commitment. And Capricorn can bring passion, but with a longer term purpose, right? It's the long term vision and this sense of attraction and action. But we want to build something that is truly real and truly meaningful. So there might be a sense of renewed motivation here in the evening for creative work, for relationships, for contributing to a part of the whole that lends itself to the reharmonizing, rebalancing. And there's going to be a sense of clarity around what we're willing to commit to, what we're willing to work for. And maybe there's this embodiment, this inner truth that really feels mature and focused for us on that day, on Wednesday. Next, we have Thursday, January 8th, just one aspect, Mercury sextiling the North Node. And this is kind of going to remind us that our destiny is in the details. So I'm talking a lot about subtle energy and intuition, and today is no exception here. And this, because it's Mercury, this is about our 3D world conversations, our communications, but also because Uranus is so active this week, it's about ourselves as antenna, ourselves as um, communicators, whether or not we're speaking, right? So this is about our conversations, our decisions, the things that we point ourselves, our attention towards. And, today's a day of nothing needs to be forced, but notice what feels naturally flowing. Notice what feels naturally um, aligned. And this is about what feels flowing when we're speaking, when we're writing, when we're communicating, or even when we're just too, tapping into ourselves as broadcasters and creators. And the idea here on Thursday is that those small little insights, those small little actions are going to ripple out. Subtle energy, outer planets always win. The subtle energy, even though we're used to the very hard 3D world, there's so much more energy that's afoot here this week. So let's get to Friday the 9th. Today's going to be a day with some heat and some drive and some energetic stretching. The metaphor I get here, it's almost like a rubber band is going to be stretched out. But one of the key things to this today is to not stretch it too far so that it snaps, to really be with what's happening. So the day starts off around 6:40 in the morning. The sun and Mars are in an exact conjunction. It's very different than the sun and Venus, right? So this means our willpower is going to strengthen, our vital energy is going to surge. The caution here is there can be a really strong urge to take action, to assert, to go forward, push forward. But here this is productive energy, but we got to make sure we give it direction, and we got to make sure that there's an intention and we're not just reacting. We're not just getting impatient. We're not just shooting from the hip here. This is about harnessing the flow of that energy. And luckily, midday around 12:30, we get Venus opposing Jupiter. So this is going to, the desire is going to expand, feelings are going to amplify, but one of the things that's going to be cautionary here with Jupiter, because Jupiter wants to expand, and with Venus is to make sure we're not overextending, make sure we're not over giving our energy, over promising, overspending, or, indulging. This is an invitation today for balance, rather than coming from, or, tap into whether or not we're really going to be able to sustain this. The final aspect that happens today is Mercury sesquiquadrate Uranus. So this is again a part of this expansion, but we're not going to want to be reactionary here with Uranus in our communication. We're really going to want to avoid snap decisions, let thoughts pass, and notice when this would be a good day, a good part of the evening to not act, and maybe to put it on the back burner and see how we feel about it in the morning. And if it's still there and it's still resonant, then take action. I say that as a general principle, but I also say it because of what's happening the next day. So the last day of this forecast for this week, Saturday, January 10th, this is about right sizing our expansion, right? So we have first in the morning around 3:45 in the morning, the sun is going to oppose Jupiter. So this is a question about scale. And I'm talking about how much is too much, how big is too big, is how much is enough, really. And so this kind of is going to highlight this sense of the tension between ambition, where we want to go, and where we can go, where our capacity can authentically sustain right now. And we're going to get the sense that growth is possible, but we need to make sure that it's authentic and it's true to ourselves and that it's honest. So the sun opposes Jupiter, but then later on, 9:30 in the morning, Mars is going to oppose Jupiter. So this is going to amplify the theme I just talked about. We're going to have this kind of sense of confidence with Mars, right? The energy is going to be strong, but we don't want to burn out, and we don't want to overreach, and we don't want to overreact. So the medicine here is moderation with courage, to take action, but not to force, to take action, but not to act out of fear. And so to be able to expand and plan to expand and take expansive actions, but to do so not by forcing and not by overriding our physical body or our energetic body. And this is about, effort being paired, action being paired with wisdom. And that's a very powerful culmination. So let me just really quickly revisit. There's kind of three distinct movements of this week. The first is the start of the week from January 4th to 6th. And that's about subtle mastery, subtle energy mastery, and really the devotion and the authenticity and the truth that comes within our heart of hearts and our tapping into our soul's true purpose. The middle of the week, January 7th and 8th, is about inspired flow and grounded passion. And then the final part of the week, the 9th and 10th, that's, we're testing the edges of expansion, but we're wanting to really stay attuned to how much is too much and what can we really authentically support. So I would say, while Mars is going to want to charge ahead, just check in and make sure we're not being reactionary. So I hope you guys find this helpful. I will be up next with a meditation to support us in moving through optimally this week. Bright blessings and love, guys.